Saturday, 5th of August, 2023, HM Prison Wakefield, West Yorkshire. An inmate is held hostage by another in a tense standoff between prison officers and the hostage taker. In the whole 6 hours that he has been held against his will, his captor will beat him and stab him, hoping to cause as much damage as possible. For you see, this man who had garnered such hatred from his fellow prisoner had gone from beloved musical icon to twisted child abuser only a few years before. And now he was getting a taste of justice, prison style. And that never ends peacefully. So join us, as today Descent into Darkness looks into one of the most dramatic falls from grace in From Lostprophet to Monster, the Ian Watkins story. And before we get into the video today, just so you know, I will be reading out some truly horrific things originally said or written by Watkins that details abuse of children. So if you aren't wanting to hear that, then you'd best duck out now, and I totally understand. Early years. Ian David Carslake Watkins was born on the 20th of July 1977 in the small southern Welsh town of Merthyr Tydfil. By the time he was at secondary school, the family had moved to Pontypridd, where he had attended the Hawthorne High School, where he would meet future bandmate Mike Lewis. The two would spend their teen years living out their dreams of stardom in Watkins' garage, where they would practice and play songs. The pair would be involved in a few local bands that didn't really go anywhere, until they finally hit it big, but more on that in a second. He went on to further and higher education, gaining a first-class degree with honours in graphic design from the University of Wales in Newport. The Lostprophets, Fame and Fortune. The alternate rock/post-grunge band The Lostprophets burst onto the music scene in 1997, with Watkins on lead vocals after switching from drums, Lee Gaze on guitar, Mike Chiplin on drums, and his old schoolmate Mike Lewis later joining them on bass, although the lineup would change a couple of times down the years. They had started out playing around the local live music scene before going on a countrywide tour, cutting a few demos and slowly gaining more and more fame as they went. The band would go on to garner lots of critical acclaim and would release 5 studio albums before their dissolution. These were 2000's The Fake Sound of Progress, 2004's Start Something, 2006's Liberation Transmission, 2010's The Betrayed, and 2012's Weapons. And now we will come to the part that I'm dreading the most of all the videos that I've ever made up to this point. Catalogue of abuse. Early signs of Watkins' drug abuse and inappropriate conduct towards children was noticed as early as 2008, and although concerns were raised with South Wales Police, they completely failed to follow it up on multiple occasions. Around this time, he had begun to request a separate dressing room from the rest of his bandmates. Perhaps they just thought the fame was going to his head, but then again, perhaps he wanted somewhere for him to carry on his vices in private. Certainly this would be where a lot of early accusations of abuse would stem from. A former partner of Watkins named Joanne Miadzalax stated that in 2010 he had shown her inappropriate pictures of minors. She had complained on more than one occasion to the police, only for them to do nothing in response. There was also a complaint made by a family in Los Angeles that claimed that Watkins had abused their 2-year-old child, but again, nothing was done about it. The concept of so-called groupies, adoring fans, usually young females, who manage to get close to their beloved artist and spend time with them backstage, is certainly not a new one. Pretty much any band or artist you can think of have had them, some more notoriously than others. This opens the door to debauchery and hedonism on an almost Romanesque scale. The Lostprophets were no exception. Fans desperately wanting to meet their idols, sending letters, waiting for them at the back door of concert venues to get an autograph, a selfie, or even just to see them close up. As the band's fame grew, so did the opportunities for Ian Watkins to exploit and to take advantage of the young, impressionable lassies that came his way. Some of the easiest targets for him were underage, being more vulnerable by virtue of their naivete. The temptation of a chance for a brush with fame, and wanting to prove how much of a dedicated fan they are, and throwing caution to the wind to show it, is a powerful force. One of these occasions would be in 2007, where he sexually abused an underage girl who was a virgin before she met Watkins. He even filmed himself having sex with her, and had her wear a school uniform while he did so, getting her to say her name and date of birth to the camera. He further urinated on her face, and ordered her to drink it, the thought of all of which makes me want to violently vomit. He would use various social media platforms to groom underage girls and boys, encouraging them to come to Lostprophet gigs and meet him backstage, where he could abuse and rape them. He then followed up with them via messages with threats that if they told anyone what had happened, he would send people round to, quote, sort them out. This alone is enough to make any decent person's blood run ice cold. It certainly does to yours truly. What's worse is that mothers were blinded into complicity for his sick and twisted desires. The aforementioned Majalax received messages from Watkins that blatantly admitted what he wanted to do, even describing it as a wish list. These included, quote, rape a 12-year-old girl and, quote, fuck 2 underage twins. She even had a photograph on her phone of a little girl in Watkins' bedroom with a line of cocaine next to her that he had sent. She reported in an interview that he told her that he wished she would fall pregnant so that he could rape the child. In February of 2012, a report was filed with South Wales Police by a man that suspected that his daughter had been abused by Watkins. Once again, the very people who were supposed to protect the public from these kinds of acts failed to follow up. It would eventually come to light that once again, Watkins had filmed the abuse for his own sick gratification. But this notwithstanding, there was an even worse aspect to this side of Watkins' notoriety. He had also encountered mothers with young children and infants, and it was the kids that Watkins was more interested in. In March of 2012, South Wales Police were again contacted by someone, for legal reasons. This person to this day is only known to history as Woman B. She had been a fan of the Lostprophets and had been corresponding with Watkins. She stated that she believed that Watkins had abused her 10-month-old in Cardiff, and that she was concerned about rumours that he had also raped a 5-year-old. However, Woman B would also face charges in the upcoming trial, as she was found to have been completely complicit with his abuse and neglecting the safety of her son, putting him in direct danger from this disgusting pedophile. It would turn out that she had pretty much facilitated the awful abuse to her own son, with messages to Watkins asking him, and I cannot believe I'm even going to say this, quote, let me know if you want to get your dick in our boy, and furthermore spoke of drugging him. In April, the pair stayed together in a hotel in London where Woman B literally gave her son to Watkins for him to do whatever he wanted. The act was filmed, and Woman B can be heard actively encouraging him to abuse her own child. Watkins both orally and anally raped the poor infant. Woman B also abused the child herself during the incident, including performing oral sex on him. In a message that Watkins sent following this incident, he told Woman B, quote, I think we've been going too easy on him so far. Time to teach him and make him learn to love it. But sadly, this was not an isolated event. Another woman, this time legally known as Woman P, a young mother with an infant daughter, was also complicit in Watkins' offending. The messages between the pair make for equally gut-churning horror. Quote, Watkins, if you belong to me, so does your baby. P. Understandable. A mother and daughter slave duo, worshipping you. Watkins, that's all she will know. A life of filth. In further messages, the pair would discuss drugging the wee girl and getting her to perform oral on Watkins, and even getting her to perform acts of bestiality. Woman P sent him a video of her digitally penetrating her daughter's vagina and sent pictures of the child's genitals to him. Thankfully, Watkins would not get to act out his sick, twisted fantasies in person, as not long after he would be finally arrested, but the damage to that little girl has already been done. It is very rare that I am lost for words, dear viewer, and I have seen some horrific shit in my time. Hell, I even saw the video of the Christchurch massacre pretty much as it was happening, and videos of people getting tortured by Latin American gangs, and that stuff is enough to turn one's stomach. But this... Nah. The fact that these women were granted anonymity is a disgrace, and a slight on British justice. I believe they should be named and shamed, just like the man who encouraged them. There is no excuse. Another report came in April from an Australian person who claimed that Watkins had outright boasted to them that he had plied a 13-year-old with drugs and had sex with her. This was not the only time that he had boasted of such things, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. In June, he once again texted another woman telling of his unnatural urges towards children, specifically stating that he wanted to rape a baby. But it would be drugs that would become Ian Watkins' downfall, as he was arrested for possession in September of 2012 at his home in Pontypridd, and he was rumoured to have been regularly smuggling both cocaine and methamphetamine into the UK from the US during his many journeys across the pond. Watkins was remanded in custody, being held at HMP Park while he awaited trial. The police seized his electronic devices, including his phone and laptop, although they had to approach the boffins at GCHQ to bypass the encryptions on the device to see what was in there. The investigators noticed as they broke into the laptop that the password for the computer was, and I quote, "I fuck kids." And now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to scrub my eyes and ears with bleach and a wire brush and then Google if it's possible to unread things. Trial, conviction, and mistaken identity. The trial of Regina versus Ian David Carslake Watkins, as well as woman B and P, began on the 25th of November 2013, with Mr. Justice John Royce presiding. He was facing quite the catalogue of charges. These were attempted rape and sexual assault of a child under 13 years of age, 3 counts of sexual assault with children, 6 counts of taking, making, or possessing of indecent images of children, and possession of extreme pornographic images involving animals. After initially denying all the charges, by the second day of the trial, he finally admitted to them, pleading guilty to all except rape. Both women B and P pled guilty to charges of sexual assault of a child under the age of 13, and for allowing the abuse to happen. Ian Watkins was convicted on all charges on the 13th of December, 2013. He was sentenced to a total of 29 years and 10 months in prison. He won't be eligible for parole until he has served 20 years. In his summing up, Mr. Justice Royce said of Watkins, "I am satisfied that you are a deeply corrupting influence. You are highly manipulative. You are a sexual predator. You are dangerous. The public, and in particular young females and children, need protection from you." For their part in the abuse of their own children, woman B was sentenced to 14 years, while woman P received 17 years, both of them to serve half of their sentences in prison and the other half on probation, dependent on behaviour. Therefore, at the time of writing, both B and P should be out on licence by now. Not that they deserve any freedom for what they did. Joanne Maguilex was also charged with possession of indecent images of children, but she would be cleared on the grounds that she was the one who had come forward with concerns about Watkins' behaviour, and her assertion that she only kept the images she was sent as evidence. In an awful side note to this already harrowing video, several appalling messages from disgusted members of the public were accidentally sent to the wrong person. Ian Watkins just so happened to share a celebrity musician namesake. Going by the nickname of H, this Ian Watkins, no relation, was a member of the 5-piece pop group Steps, who found fame at the same time, best known for their cover of the Bee Gees' song Tragedy. By this time, save for occasional Christmas pantomime work, H and his bandmates weren't seen very often, but this did not stop many from getting him confused with the lead singer of the Lostprophets, and bombarding the entirely innocent H with torrents of abuse and death threats. Thankfully, many realised their mistake and apologised, but still didn't help. H has said that the ordeal was highly distressing and caused him a great deal of upset, which is hardly surprising. Poor guy. Following the trial, the Independent Police Complaints Commission, or IPCC, published a report in the summer of 2016 that investigated the various failings of the police to follow up on the various instances warning of Watkins' behaviour. The report found that 3 individual investigators should face disciplinaries for their failure to follow up on these concerns. It further added, "The consequence of the force's failings was arguably that a predatory paedophile offended over an extended period of time. The evidence obtained in this investigation suggests that South Wales Police were faced with a litany of reports about his behaviour, yet in some instances did not carry out even rudimentary investigation, made errors and omissions, and missed opportunities to bring him to justice earlier than he ultimately was." Upon publication of the report, the South Wales Force formally apologised for their failings and accepted blame for them. However, there appears to be little to no information regarding the 3 officers that were to face disciplinary action. Knowing as I do that the police has always been something of a very, quote, closed shop, I sincerely doubt that anything was done. A lot of the time when things like this come up, an officer can simply retire beforehand without any further consequences or loss of pension. They can even apply to join different forces, and if that happens, they will generally be accepted as, due to them jumping before they were pushed, their records were not tarnished. It wouldn't surprise me if this was the case here. On the inside. For most of his sentence so far, Watkins has remained locked up in HMP Wakefield, a Category A prison, which is the top level of security in the UK. Due to its rogues gallery of infamous detainees, HMP Wakefield has gained the gruesome moniker of the Monster Mansion, with names such as Charlie Bronson, Colin Ireland, the world's most prolific serial killer Harold Shipman, Robert Black, Robert Maudsley, Ian Huntley, and Mark Hobson. The latter 2 I've made videos about already, link in the description. Just like US prisons, rapists and child molesters do not get an easy time in UK jails, and being so high profile, Watkins has had a target on his back from day one. He would be further punished when a cell search turned up a mobile phone. For this, his sentence was increased by another 10 months. But on the morning of the 5th of August 2023, a fellow prisoner, who has never been named, took Watkins hostage in his cell over an unpaid drug debt. Watkins was held for around 6 hours, in the course of which he was stabbed with the handle of a toilet brush that had been filed down into a shiv. Seems an appropriate weapon to use on him when you think on it. Finally, after a long and tense standoff, the prison guards were able to get in and regain control of the situation. Watkins was rushed to hospital for his wound, but it was reported that it was not life-threatening, news which disappointed many of us greatly. During his time in the jug, he has received hundreds of letters from people, mostly females, who, astoundingly, still want some kind of relationship with him. A lot of replies that he has sent have been desperately begging them for pornographic photographs. He has even boasted about having previously worked as a male prostitute via the website Adult Work, asking his pen pals to seek out his old profile and look at some of the pornographic pictures and videos he posted on this profile, and to get back to him with what they thought of them. Some of these letters have come to light, showing that he attempts to woo them with lines such as, "Can you handle me?" and referring to them as minx, pretty one, or princess. He signs off these letters as referring to himself variously as Boy Wonder, King of Dancers, and, more fittingly, Trouble. One of his correspondents was a 21-year-old mother of a 2-year-old girl, who quite rightly had her children taken from her by social services due to her contact with Watkins. He was also banned from corresponding with another woman in her 30s when it became known that she had a 6-year-old daughter. Watkins has been even known to refer to his raft of crimes as, quote, mega lols, and that he didn't even know why people were freaking out. It is clear that Ian Watkins has yet to learn from his behaviour, and hopefully that will mean that he will be kept locked up where he can no longer directly harm anyone, for he deserves nothing less. Legacy. This case has proven one of the most difficult to write, due to the sickening content, but of course I always pledge to bring you the full details without fear or favour. I am just so glad that Watkins was caught and had to face the consequences for his sick urges. Amazingly, if you can believe it, Watkins' Twitter feed still exists, although he has not been active, for obvious reasons, since late 2012. His last tweet reading, "Well, that escalated pretty quickly. I do apologise." Other tweets from his history are equally worrying, with another reading, "Before you remember, oh yeah, before you give in, just remember we're coming back for your children." And at Tomzor, "Stop crying or I'll fuck you till you die, you little baby." I cannot fathom why this page has not yet been deleted, and can easily be found on X to this day. What is worse is that the profile still has 24,000 followers. From his letters written in prison, it is clear that Watkins has made zero effort to change his ways. This is not unusual for child sex offenders, particularly of the caliber of his level of depravity. In my time working for the probation service, I had the unenviable task of being around many sex offenders and had to pretend to be civil to them and help them to reintegrate into the community, which definitely goes against my own personal feelings on such people, which I have made no secret about in previous videos. A lot of the time, they will screw up, and they will get recalled to prison, simply because they cannot change what they are, which is why I don't think they should be in the community. I believe that Ian Watkins will be one of those people who will be recalled, probably many times, hopefully to the point where he spends most of his remaining years locked away, where his ability to do harm is severely limited, which will be an undisputable good for the public. Although I do believe that he and the two women that helped him commit some of his abuse should have been given a life sentence with a whole life order, but sadly, I am not the Home Secretary. Yet. But I should take a moment here to ensure that the police are not let off the hook either. The South Wales Force was informed on multiple occasions of Watkins' extremely disturbing behaviour. Time and again they completely failed to do anything about it. This is beyond the pale. The police are supposed to be the ones that we trust to protect us and to seek out the wrong uns in our midst and put them where they belong. If this trust is broken, then all you have is pure anarchy, and that is a world I do not want to even consider. The police need to stop arsing around with petty non-offences and pour their resources into catching real criminals who directly threaten people's safety, not locking people up for wrongthink at the behest of a few loud yet annoying groups who don't seem to realise that they too will eventually be thrown into the very gulags that they so desperately want built. And if the government won't give the police more resources to fight proper crime, then we should replace them with one that will. I would rather see one dirty nonce locked up than 100,000 frustrated people for posting a critical thought online. We have lost our way as a society, and it is time for a reset to what really matters in this world. The greater good will not be achieved by pandering to a bunch of petty-minded loudmouths that can't even form a cogent argument to their farted-out ideas of offensive language or whatever claptrap du jour they come up with in their tiny padded echo chambers. Real criminals are out there, and they are running wild because they are being allowed to by the police, who clearly only want to prosecute easy cases. If my mum or auntie were alive today, and they could see the state of policing in this country, they would weep. They knew what real policing was, because they had done it. But I shall end this video with a note of wishes for Watkins' victims, that they are able to come to terms with what happened to them, and that they can find some kind of closure, knowing that he is now right where he belongs, and getting the comeuppance from his fellow inmates that he so richly deserves. Thank you for watching this video. Despite the horrific nature of the content, I do hope you at least found it informative and interesting. If you did, please consider leaving it a like and share it far and wide to let the algo know it's worth proliferating. Check out my back catalogue to find even more dark documentaries just like this one. What do you think of today's video? Comment below your thoughts on this awful excuse of an individual and the sickos that were willing to facilitate his crimes. If you wish to do so, you can support the ID on Patreon, link in the description, or by becoming a channel member, or if you prefer to give a one-off donation, you can do so by the Super Thanks button. A huge thank you to all my current patrons and channel members who drive me to create more and more great content for you all. This particular video, I imagine, will almost certainly be demonetized, which I don't necessarily mind, as I said from the start that I would not shy away from the most horrific topics. But it does of course mean that, as this is my full-time job, the old bottom line is somewhat affected, which isn't exactly great at the moment anyway, so any support you can give is greatly appreciated. And if you can't get enough of my smooth narration style, head on over to my alternate channel DID Reads, where I post renditions of poetry, famous speeches and short stories, etc. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves, and I shall see you on our next descent into darkness.